just can't take no more games. Feel you on that one, my man.
Okay, Tuesday edition of the After Show. You got Week of Justice with you a week over here on the East Coast.
And Justice on the West Coast. It is red sky at Morning Tuesday. If there's a red sky in your morning, it means it's Tuesday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it could be calamitous. It could, well, I don't know. If the storms are brewing, it might be bringing nutrients.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's always a positive in the face of calamity. Hey, Wink.
Yes.
How are you doing?
Not bad, not bad. 62, pretty much like yesterday, a little on the gloomy side, but we'll take it. Yesterday, it actually did, the gloom blew away in the afternoon. It was just a nice afternoon, sunny, and right up around 70 or so. So, yeah, so we'll probably follow that course today, I hope. Anyway, reminder, get in the chat. Just go to netrootsradio.com. Scroll down to the bottom of the page, and on the right-hand side of the bottom of the page, there is a link to the chat. So click that. Join us there.
And I got to tell you, our homepage is dedicated to get out the vote. So get out the vote, damn it.
Yes.
Come on. I'm telling you, the Ruskies can only manipulate the margins.
Right, right.
As far as we know.
As far as we know, anyway, yeah.
But the more people vote, the more work we have to put them through.
Absolutely.
To try to disrupt this great experiment.
Yeah,
How dare
I don't
they?
think it's going to happen. I think,
before I get into the weather here,
yep.
I just got to say it kind of bugs me that the GOP is blocking the investigation into, I know, yeah. foreign influences on our electoral process. You would think that would be part of, like the prime directive. As we're floating through space, going to other galaxies far, far away.
Yes, you would think.
That's part of the prime directive. You would think. Okay, well, here along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, it is currently, let's see. 51 degrees. Oh, yes, 51 degrees. Mostly cloudy. We're going to have a high of 63. It has been raining and sprinkling overnight. 30% chance of rain currently. That's been bouncing around between 40 and 20%. 30% right now.
Okay.
And then showers tonight and tomorrow. So I consider that to be good.
Yeah, you were saying something about snow, too, in your neck of the
snow
woods.
east of me, yeah.
Okay.
And actually that front moved through, and, they're snowing on Wyoming. So make Cheney.
Okay.
If we can make the Cheneys uncomfortable, I have no problem.
Right, exactly.
But they're not. He's got a cold heart anyway.
Yeah.
The freeze doesn't really bother him.
Yeah.
Wow. What a crazy election season.
It's been great. Yeah.
I thought George Wallace was weird.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, kids, look it up. George Wallace.
Yeah, if you're under 40.
You'll see. I mean, we've been here before, It's not as if there were people, when we watch or look at those black and white stills of the KKK marching down Pennsylvania Avenue in front of the Capitol and the White House. And the feeling from seeing that photograph, this from like back in 1908, say.
Right.
And, the feeling is that that's the prevailing attitude that was across the whole nation. No, the attitude was not necessarily prevailing, but, the people who are most visible and most willing to be bullies about it, usually, they're the ones that get their pictures taken in instances like that. Okay. So, what I'm trying to say is that there were a lot of people that thought that was one of the most stupid things anybody would do, that it did violate the prime directive of what, the country's about. Because I maintain that because of the compromise that we had to make with the South to include them, because, look, We needed their money, we needed manpower, and we needed armies, because of the British Empire.
Yeah.
Okay? So those compromises with those slave states had to be made for those reasons. But baked into the Constitution, kind of against what Scalia would have. The ghost of Scalia still maintains, because he's still here,
Oh yeah.
Never leaves. Notice, well, I'll come back to that. But the Constitution is to evolve. Baked into that was the idea that, maybe these slaves are human beings and not mere chattel animals that we can, put a yoke on. There's some people that believe today that, they are human beings, and other people that are not of their hue are animals. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
And that was that was an attitude among some people, that these are not human beings. They're, they look like it, but they're really animals, and they treated accordingly. So I'm just saying, we were to change. All right. Well, it's just that the full-throated racism that occurs, like I've said before, there's no silent majority about these people. There's nothing silent about them, and they're not a majority. It's about time we give up this attitude that by raising our voices against it, we become like them. See, that's a fallacy in our liberal thinking. Oh, don't, you're acting just like them. No, I'm standing in opposition to it. I'm tired of standing there and not saying anything.
Yep.
It's about time we said something. You wait too long. Next thing you know, you're being denied. You're denied entry at some port somewhere, and they got to send your ship back to where you came from. Just saying.
Heck yeah.
We could have been on those ships. Okay. We could have been the ones sending our kids somewhere else. And then they got turned away because, scary refugees. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry there. I've been getting requests from David and some of his listeners through him and also through us. Is there a direct URL for our pods, Wink?
Yeah, I can. I'll put that in a diary.
Okay, good.
That's the way to do it, I guess. Yeah.
And then I can send that out to people.
Yeah.
That's just, so.
I guess the diary would be the best spot for that, I guess.
People want to have fun and frivolity,
Yes.
on their time schedule. We in live radio here, we're just featuring it.
Exactly. We got it on Spreaker.
Yeah.
Spreak. It's like a sneaker, but except it's with a P instead of an S. Basically, Spreaker, Spreaker, something like that, Spreaker.com. And if you just, I think if you just type in Never's Radio, it'll come up in the search box, and our pod should be right there.
Okay. All right.
That's the best way to find them. And if they don't, just click the episodes button, because that's the episodes will be. There's a whole line of our latest shows, basically. So yeah,
we'll try to figure it out and make it as easy for possible.
Yeah, but we'll put a link in the diary.
Get a URL. That's always good. Hey, well, these are the stories that we're going to be attending to today because it's Tuesday, and we usually have a big day on Tuesday. All right, Clark County, Washington must pay $250,000 for violating homeless people's civil rights.
Yeah.
I don't know. Got to have somebody to kick. I don't know what it is. Hey, by contributing roughly $12 billion every year, undocumented immigrants could teach Trump a lesson or two about paying taxes. And 3 British-born scientists win the 2016 Nobel Prize for Physics for their studies on exotic phases of matter. Wow. And you know what? They did it with math. Yeah, math. Just saying. Hey, for the last half, it is Tuesday. And that means we get to visit with Chris Reeves, still affectionately known as Tom Servo 433.
Hell yeah.
For news about the failing Kansas experiment,
Yeah.
and we're going to have a discussion on media coverage of the results of Missouri's statewide measures of academic progress test, you know, the MAP test,
Okay.
versus Missouri school districts taking extra security measures against scary evil clowns.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sounds like hysteria to me, but I'm old school. All that, plus the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Codes community calendar and more on the after show with that ever so fine fellow with his ever so subtle East Coastal elitism. Yeah, he masks it with his upstate New York, kind of, gait. But he's an elitist nonetheless because of the coastal region he resides, and his name is Wink. And this guy all the way back over here on the West Coast, and that you would think that would make me a coastal elite, but no, my elitism is not bound by any geographical location. Not at all. And my name is Justice, and we do this 5 days a week for an hour-ish, because who loves you, baby? And I guess we could also say because we can. That's right. You know, one thing that I didn't really get when I lived in the Bay Area was a lot of church radio. I can't wink. I'm having a hard time on the dial when I'm out in the car.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time on the dial. And I guess this has been the plight of people, and they just go, oh, he's just now being exposed to church radio. No, I'm not just now being exposed. I'm just still amazed at the proliferation of it.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to wane.
Yeah, you would think. Yeah, it has, I guess. We don't get that much here. We get it on Sunday, but we don't. That's about the only day we get it.
I'm not talking about Shiva the Destroyer radio. I'm not talking about Buddha radio. Okay.
Right.
I swear to God, I hear rattlesnakes rattling in the background on some of these radio shows I listen that are on the radio here. Scary.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, the snake stuff in the Pentecostal things works better in the tent revival.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe on TV. Radio doesn't work.
Right. You need
Really
a little visual there, I think, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some things work on radio and some things don't. And I think, the test by rattlesnake is, I don't know. It's just something I don't want to have to see in my mind's eye. Well, Washington County must pay $250,000 for violating homeless people's civil rights. And how did they do that? Alan Pike from Think Progress is going to tell us. Cleanup sweeps of homeless encampments destroy property, disrupt the marginal stability that informal communities bring, and do nothing to house those living outdoors. And now, in the Portland, Oregon area, they are also costing taxpayers money. Just in terms of geography, Portland is Oregon, Clark County, Washington is Washington. They are two different states. And really, police forces don't go from one state to another. Generally, you would say. So don't blame it on Portland, but Portland has their own problem too. Clark County, Washington will pay $250,000 to settle a lawsuit brought by a half dozen homeless individuals over a series of sweeps conducted from 2012 to 2014, just north of the Oregon border. Workers there routinely confiscated and destroyed a range of belongings during the sweeps. How many times have we heard this? This is what bugs me. Oh, you're a poor person? Let's destroy all your stuff. God, I hate that. So they destroyed a range of belongings during the sweeps, including camp stoves, legal documents, and family photographs. Memories. You're too poor for memories. County law enforcement policy said that the work crews could confiscate property without notice if a camp was abandoned. If it was active, residents were given an hour's notice to pack their things and get out of town. But in practice, lawyers for the plaintiffs said homeless people would routinely return to their tents from meals at local charities to find workers that purloined their stuff. All right. Have they gone off to breakfast yet at the food mission down the street? Yeah. Last one's out. Okay. Camp abandoned. Let's go. The new settlement includes $165,000 in attorney fees and $85,000 the six get to split up among themselves because that's the way God intended it. And that's actually in direct restitution. It's not, well, okay. The county is also committing to give a full 48 hours notice before sweeps and to offer to store property for people who get relocated. Cosmetic concessions that are common in larger cities where sweeps still routinely violate homeless people's civil rights and make it harder for people to regain their footing. Such sweeps have grown popular with local governments around the country in recent years because it's fun and it takes your mind off the fact that things are going to hell in a handbasket because of your own failing fiscal policies and you got to kick someone. And the homeless have always been there. Let's kick them. Loser.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to put up with now. See, when we label things, I think that's quite important. So, here in my area, there's, the attendant crime that comes with a transient population. Because I live along an interstate corridor, and there's a obvious meth problem among a certain segment of this transient population, but everybody gets labeled homeless, right? And so in some of my neighbors' mind's eye, a homeless person is a meth-addicted white, maybe a white nationalist, kind of thing going on, who's doing property crimes, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I don't know what to label those people. Transient meth heads. Meth head crooks. Transient meth head crooks. Doesn't quite roll off the tongue, but, there's just a demonizing of a whole swath of people, and it's not a good thing to do. So then these encampments, people in them, I don't know, even the meth heads, I suppose, need some help, right? I mean, we can't just kick them.
Right.
But it just kind of bothers me when, all of these divergent behaviors are consolidated under the umbrella of homeless. Because I think of the Dorothea Lange photographs of people who are homeless in the Dust Bowl, I think of Syrian kids washing up on, Greek shorelines. Just bugs me.
Yeah.
Last year, the Department of Housing and Urban Development lent teeth to expert advice when it updated the formula for federal funding to homeless programs to punish cities that use a range of move-along laws to criminalize the day-to-day realities of homelessness. Combined with a growing body of research on the net negative human and financial impacts of criminalization policies toward the homeless and increased buy-in on the basic idea that giving people permanent supportive housing is the best way to reduce and end homelessness. The opposition to sweeps is helping to reshape the fight against homelessness. Seattle has formally recognized temporary camps, and Indianapolis has extended legal protections to them. But the old criminalization mentality remains widespread. Sweeps are a particularly stubborn phenomenon, and they haven't simply disappeared. For local leaders often motivated by short-term political convenience and short-sighted public frustration, they still represent a quick fix to gripes from citizens and the media alike. And who doesn't love taking a bunch of pictures of the down and out having their possessions confiscated and thrown in a dumpster? We'll teach them. And the real estate community often has an economic interest in seeing homeless people shuffled from one tile of a city's chessboard to another, as has been the case in East Harlem. Since 2014, that's when Pope Francis visited. And the cop said, move along.
Yeah, indeed.
Move along. It doesn't make the town look good. Come on. Oh, and now there's a big high-rise, being built. That's, I don't know, $6 million per condo kind of deal.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So heavy enforcement continued long after the Pope was headed back to the Vatican. There's a new luxury high-rise apartment block going up a block away. Indigent people in the area say developers are rebranding the area around the 125th Street Amtrak and commuter rail station as Upper Grand Central Station.
Yeah, there you go.
Market the neighborhood outsiders.
Heck yeah.
Who know any better? Homeless people have long congregated around the station, but they don't fit the new image. Police have continued trying to push them out of the neighborhood, prompting homeless charities and the New York Civil Liberties Union to mount a legal challenge earlier this year. Well, permanent supportive housing costs less and makes people not homeless. But I guess that would put some people who are getting paid to kick homeless people out of a job.
Right.
I think that union's stronger than the other one.
Exactly.
That's what I... Okay, this next article is by Esther Ushile from Think Progress. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump claimed a $916 million loss on his income tax returns after the New York Times received 3 pages from his filings from 1995. His tax deduction could have allowed him to avoid paying federal income taxes for about 18 years. While Trump often likes to associate the undocumented immigrant population with criminality and economic burden, they are also a group of people who have contributed billions of dollars in taxes. Democratic presidential rival Hillary Clinton took to Twitter on Saturday to criticize Trump's tax returns, pointing out that the people he scapegoats have contributed more in taxes than he has. This is Hillary's tweet. According to the New York Times, Trump may contribute less to our military and college students than the undocumented immigrants he wants to deport. See, this is the reason. I mean, rich people like Trump should want all these undocumented immigrants to put into the national treasury without taking a fraction out, if anything, so that he can live high on the hog like he's been doing. You kick out all these people, he's going to have to come up with $916 million plus. Come on. Bad business. According to the fact-checking publication PolitiFact, the American workforce includes 3.1 million undocumented immigrants who paid and contributed about $13 billion in Social Security taxes in 2010. After taking out about $1 billion in benefits that some may have received, it still appears that undocumented population contributed $12 billion. And it looks like another study has proven the same thing. And they've been doing this at roughly $12 billion every year. So I always love it when I get these, these graphs that say, oh yeah, they're taking out welfare, or they're costing us $11 billion a year. And I go, you got the numbers wrong. They're putting in $12 billion, and they're lucky if the whole class of them are taking out $1 billion in a year.
Right.
Well, it counters what Trump has claimed in the past. A GOP presidential candidate has cited erroneous figures that undocumented immigrants cost $113 billion in local, state, and federal taxes, a figure lifted from the Federation for American Immigration Reform website, an anti-immigrant organization founded by white nationalist John Tanton. Well, of course he's pulling from white nationalist sites. He has the best genes. He has Germanic genes, wink. Yeah. He's gloated about it. He has the best genes. Which gave me the same argument that my relatives had when they were fighting the best genetic military force the world had ever seen. All these Aryan soldiers and stuff, and all you had to do was look at their leader who touted this Aryan superiority, and you go, well, what went wrong with him? If that's superior genes, why isn't Trump one of the most intelligent people? He touts his intelligence. But you know what? An intelligent person doesn't need to say it, right?
Exactly.
So that's the first tell, right? So if those are superior genetics, I'm going to be with the mutts. That's right. Speaking of mutts, did you know that there's still this thing called science, and in the subheading of science, there's this thing physics, and it has nothing to do with claiming your faith by being bit by rattlesnakes. Okay, it's amazing. It's like a whole other world. This is out of Reuters. British-born scientists David Thouless, Duncan Haldane, and Michael Kosterlitz won the 2016 Nobel Prize for Physics today for their studies of unusual states of matter, which may open up new applications in electronics. Their discoveries using advanced mathematics had boosted research in condensed matter physics and raised hopes for users in new generations of electronics and superconductors or future quantum computers, the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences said. Thanks to their pioneering work, the hunt is now on for new and exotic phases of matter. Excuse me. That'll be picked up later. So, exotic phases of matter, the Academy said in a statement, awarding the 8 million Swedish crown prize, which works out to $937,000. Wow. Maybe they can defer that over 8. No, they can't. They're splitting it up. Many people are hopeful of future applications in both materials science and electronics, the Nobel Prize Committee said. Thouless was awarded half the prize, and the other half divided between Haldane and Kosterlitz. Niles Martinson, acting chairman of the Nobel Committee for Physics, told a news conference the winners had discovered a set of totally unexpected regularities in the behavior of matter. I'm sorry, I want a president that can speak to these scientists as peers, right? Or at least a president who has critical thinking skills enough to at least appreciate what these fellows have done. Is that too much to ask?
Exactly.
This has paved a way for designing new materials with novel properties, and there is great hope that this will be important for many future technologies, he said. Physics is the second of this year's crop of Nobels and comes after Japan's Yoshinori Osumi was awarded the prize for medicine yesterday, and we announced that too. As Nobel Physics laureates, the trio of researchers joined the ranks of some of the greatest names in science, including Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, and Marie Curie. And of course, we know it's in accordance with the will of dynamite maker Alfred Nobel.
There you go. Yeah.
Because he felt pretty bad. So I made all this money off this destruction. Do this. All right. Let's get to our Jim Hightower break. We'll come back, go through the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar, and then a discussion with Chris Reeves about failing financial economic policies and education being threatened by scary evil clowns. Ooh. You're listening to the After Show with Wink and Justice on Netroots Radio, and we will be right back.
The media establishment has labeled Donald Trump a populist, endorsing his absurd assertion that while he might be a billionaire, he'll be our billionaire, fighting for us commoners. I'm not telling anyone how to vote, and I certainly understand the inclination to grab the biggest stick you can find to whack the bejesus out of those political and corporate elites holding you and your family down. And Trump has sold himself as the biggest, baddest stick around. But I am here to say, don't be a sucker. There's not a single populist muscle in Donnie's whole plutocratic body. He'll sell out wage earners, small business people, and anyone else to serve his own needs or whims, as his lifelong record, as opposed to his recent rhetoric, reveals. Donnie learned to be self-serving from his father, Fred, who became a millionaire by getting federal housing subsidies to build apartment buildings in New York City. Then, as landlord, he flagrantly discriminated against black people trying to rent an apartment. One of Fred's tenants was none other than Woody Guthrie, who was so appalled by Daddy Trump's greed and racism that he wrote songs denouncing him. The Donald not only inherited Fred's fortune, but also his business ethics, including engaging in wage theft, outsourcing his expensive Trump-branded products to such low-wage countries as China and Vietnam, and illegally using and underpaying undocumented immigrants to build his luxury projects. Also, he's been sued hundreds of times for stiffing cabinet makers, plumbers, and other small business suppliers. This is Jim Hightower saying, Donald J. Trump is a swaggering son of privilege who has never been on the side of working people and most certainly would not be a populist president. To the contrary, in his heart, mind, and his whole being, he's nothing but a Trumpist of, by, and for himself.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
Powered by Unity Networks. You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Okay, we're back.
And indeed, we are back, and thank you for sticking with us. This is the After Show with Wink and Justice. Justice here along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the West Coast. Wink is in upstate New York 21 on the East Coast. Chris Reeves is in the vast plains in the Midwest, and that would be in the Midwest.
Yes.
Safely ensconced, by the way. And our crew are the ethereal creatures who reside in the clouds, so that means they're floating in a virtual medium because they are the ethereal creatures who reside in that cloud because of their intergalactic technical abilities, who are so advanced that allows Netroots Radio, thus by extension the After Show, to span the globe, the universe, and if there is a beyond that too.
Indeed.
All right. So today's Connect Unite Act Daily Coast Community Calendar is facilitated by True Blue Majority, and the question is, have you ever had a debate party? And I'm all like, yeah. We used to have, you know what? As a kid, I vaguely remember the Nixon-Kennedy debate. And I remember seeing that on closed circuit TV at a big auditorium at Oregon State. So I guess that would be like a debate party of sorts. There was refreshments.
Right.
And a kid's room. They tried to keep me in, but I was too curious about what the heck was going on. All right. The Daily Coast Asheville Cossacks are, of course, having their meetup here this month now. It's October. So Monday, October 24th from 12 to 6 p.m. in Asheville at the White Duck Taco, 12 Biltmore Avenue in Asheville. And they're going to be meeting up to support Reverend Barber's early voting campaign. And Randall is usually the person who is the point person on this, but go to the Connect Unite Act Daily Coast Community Diary for all pertinent links. And that is your Connect Unite Act Daily Coast Community Calendar for the 4th of October. Time's going to be changing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're falling back. We're going to be falling back soon. I can feel it.
Yep.
Hey, Chris, how you doing? Lots of stuff happened since last week, and I don't know. Why don't we just get right into it? You have a diary that you posted yesterday, and it's been not only making the rec list on Daily Coast, but getting repeated out there in the social media. And it's the continuing saga of the Kansas experiment failure.
Yes, it is. So, in fact, I joke with people I could almost, copy and paste from month to month with just minor revisions, which would include the numbers and small details to go from month to month and talk about how bad it truly is. In fact, this morning, several of Brownback's supporters have taken to Twitter to argue that, this is in fact just a projection problem. We always project wrong, and we project wrong so we can spend more money. I've had to remind them that they are the ones who are providing the projections. So that's a pretty heck of a statement coming from the governor's staff.
Well, why doesn't Brownback just take the Trump tactic and say this $43 million shortfall is just evidence of my great economic and business acumen?
Well, actually, what Brownback is going to do is even better than that. He's pulling a page straight out of Trump, and they are talking this morning about no longer releasing the numbers by month at all. Or that they will do what they have done with what's called the quarterly report. Now, the quarterly economic report in Kansas covers job creation, investment, more than just revenue and income. And the governor did spike that. For the first time, we are not issuing one this quarter. So the state of Kansas has no idea what job creation or outlook looks like for the last quarter or investment. But we have decided that, the public doesn't really need that information, so we just won't hand it out. And as much as Trump hides his tax returns, it appears as though the state of Kansas is also just going to refuse to disclose its financial data. And that may be the route that we go forward.
So how does that impact, how bonds are rated by bond companies? Are they going to be precluded from doing that also? How does this work?
Well, several of the Democrats, but especially Anthony Hensley, who is the Senate leader, and Jim Ward, who is a House member out of Wichita, have argued that Brownback's point of lack of transparency or his refusal to disclose could be potentially devastating to bondholders who will have no idea how to verify the progress of their bonds and therefore will be very disinterested from investing. Forget the bond rating, which would, of course, suffer. It's also one, would you ever invest in a company where they said, but we can't actually tell you how we're doing? You just have to believe that we're doing well. That sounds something straight out of, The Wolf of Wall Street.
Right. So, now, as far as I understand, the Kansas courts are sort of packed, right? So
right.
How does
Here's
this?
the thing right now.
How does this muster constitutional review?
If this comes up to the courts right now, there is a fight in Kansas over the courts, and that is that governors get to a point, but it has to go through a selection process that goes through attorneys and those. So the Supreme Court in Kansas has been very negative to Brownback, and he has lost repeatedly in front of the state Supreme Court. And as a result, the conservatives have mounted a campaign this fall called Reject Them All. And the conservatives are saying we need to vote against retention on all of the Supreme Court judges so that Brownback can appoint all new ones who will, of course, be far more conservative and go along with his plan. Can he sell that now? I don't know.
Right.
Of course, their entire attack on him isn't over the fact that the Supreme Court has been very negative over Brownback's tax plans and his lack of disclosure, school funding, and those kind of transparency issues, all of those kind of things. No, the attack on the Supreme Court has turned into a statewide abortion debate over why won't the Supreme Court let us ban abortion. If Brownback succeeds and he overturns the court, then no matter what gains we make in the legislature, they may be a little bit short-lived.
Well, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but because I ask this all the time, how is this tactic, and also more importantly, how is revelation of another gigantic shortfall? How is that impacting, the gal on Main Street in some little town, and how is that impacting the grain elevator guys? And it just seems like it's going to hit them not only in their pocketbook, but just in so many other ways too.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of things that suddenly become iffy. But the biggest thing that becomes iffy is what the state of Kansas has started to call the Bank of KDOT. The Kansas Department of Transportation receives money from other sources than just the state. It has a backlog of funds, which is designed to help, control anything bad that happens. Think about everything that highway funds deal with: snow clearage, emergency repair. So they have their own bailiwick of money that's been back to them, plus their toll road revenue and federal matching, all that kind of good stuff. Well, what has happened is that when the state gets in trouble, they have the road service issue bonds, or the road service goes into their own kitty and loans it back to the state so the state can stay operating. And this is a really important fact because before the budget shortfall was announced, the Associated Press did analysis on the state of Kansas, and they found that the state of Kansas didn't have enough money in its own bank to stay operating for more than 2 days on the revenue that it had. So we have absolutely no protection at all. The state of Kansas is day to day making bills. We're not talking about living paycheck to paycheck. We're talking about living from daily deposit to daily deposit on making the bills that they have to pay every day.
How are these bond measures floated? 5-cent increase on square footage on the nail salon on Main Street?
Well, at a certain point, what has really happened was that as we kept missing revenue, the governor and those in his side did not want to put back income tax. The state of Kansas has been on a march to zero on income tax. The governor doesn't believe in it, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we've done is we've continually raised sales tax. Well, there's two real harms to that. When you raise sales tax, especially in Kansas, we tax food. The easiest way to lower the revenue for the state is that people stop spending. And when people aren't spending, it means that less revenue comes into the state, fewer jobs are created, and so you end up with a lot of job stagnation. And this is the part that people forget. When we talk about people getting more money, like raises or minimum wage increase, and you'll hear people tell you the horror show, people will cut jobs. What the reality is, in most cases, unless you raise your rates above the market saturation, is people get more money, and then what do they turn around and do? They spend it. If you give more money to people who are wealthy, what do? They save it because they already have enough to live comfortably. They aren't immediately rushing out to buy a new TV. But if you find somebody who's earning minimum wage, who's at the very bottom, the first thing they do is pay bills, which means businesses who are waiting on money to come in suddenly have money that comes in, or they go out and they handle expenses that they've been putting off because they didn't have the money. And those two things stimulate an economy. And this is the part that they're missing. So when you raise the sales tax, what happens? Well, people who aren't earning any more money now have higher cost for basic goods, which means they're buying fewer frivolous goods, I shouldn't say frivolous, but fewer outside goods that they normally would, which means you're injecting less, not more, sales tax back into the marketplace. It means job growth slows down. It means businesses struggle to keep money coming in the door. Nobody's going to go into the candle shop and buy aromatic candles if all of a sudden their monthly budget for food just went up $30.
Right. Well, another argument that I hear is that if you pay a prevailing wage for farm work, all the producers in the surrounding states will drain your labor pool and they'll get all the business. And what we've experienced here in Oregon, because their great argument was that, everything's going to go to Idaho. Well, actually what happened is that folks from Idaho came to Oregon for the prevailing wage, and they spent their money in the local communities. And there were, granted it's a seasonal thing, but there were little economic booms during a harvest.
Mm-hmm. What people don't understand when they talk about agriculture is this. The most important element of agriculture is the land. And listening to Trump, you realize Republicans do not understand this anymore. Every time I hear Trump proclaim, well, we should have taken the oil. How? Where are you going to pick up, tons of land and relocate the land, which, by the way, contains the oil? It's not as though we can pick up the entire country of Iraq and just relocate it. Let's do a Wile E. Coyote and cut down in the soil 2 miles and just pick the whole thing up and move it south of Mexico. That doesn't work. So when you talk about changing farm infrastructure, you've got to realize the farmland is the farmland. And so you're not moving the ground out of Nebraska or Kansas or Iowa and just picking it up and moving it somewhere else. And as long as America has a growing population, which we do, not as fast as we used to, but still by the numbers, still growing, then you're going to have more need for, guess what? Food. And as a result, you have more need of, guess what? Farmers and the use of their land. And you're not going to get that land. Nobody's planting corn in New York City. I mean, maybe somebody in a little garden, but nobody's planting 1,000 acres of corn, in a metro area. It does not happen. So you have to work the marketplace to make sure that, people are participating and they have money to come back. But the governor's plan, which has been to decrease income tax and then increase sales tax on the other end, which, by the way, should sound familiar to a lot of people because it's basically, if you ever hear people talk about, the fair tax, which is Steve Forbes' idea of the government should just go to all sales tax, you're going to understand exactly how that's punishing on people who are poor because, again, going back to what I said originally, people who already have money, they're okay. Whatever money they save, it just goes to savings. People who don't have money, they are not saving back lots of money because they don't have it to save. And as a result, you just cripple how much people spend, and there's fewer money circulating unless you're wealthy.
This is Trump has touted Kansas as being a model. Doesn't he see the irony of it? Trump
has repeatedly called Kansas a model for the economic future of the country. And that's a reason why every time I run this, I say to people, you've got to really step back and think about this. Because if you're all bought into Trump and how great of a businessman Trump is pointing to Kansas and calling it an example. Well, by God, if that's what he thinks, then you need to look at what's happening in Kansas and realize we came close to shutting our schools. Our roads are suffering, and the state gets around it by converting state roads into county roads so that they can write them off, which is a little bit like, well, we're just going to declare failure and go home. We're doing all of these shortcuts to cut out funds, mental health funding, prison funding, all of these things, education funding, all of it suffering. And Donald Trump points to this as an example. He has Chris Kobach, who's our Secretary of State, chief, vote disenfranchiser, if I can make up that phrase, helping to debate prep Mike Pence. And you've got this attitude that somehow Kansas has found something great. And I bring it up because Democrats it would be very unlikely for Democrats to win Kansas in November, very unlikely. But Democrats should go to other states and just simply say, look, if you want to know what Trump is going to do, you need to look at Kansas. You need to look at Louisiana. You need to look at these places where they tried this and it became a god-awful disaster, and realize this is what you're asking for. You're asking for something that will be devastating. And I'm going to switch to something else, and I know we had talked earlier about other topics. I want to bring this up because here in about the next half hour, I'm going to publish a diary that I hope gets some discussion. In Kansas, at the same time, we're seeing the real impact of the Trump candidacy in the alt-right. Trump has really breathed life into the alt-right. We had a racist attack at Bethany College, which is a religious institution where a president was attacked publicly for adopting 2 biracial children. Right. We have now had Gordon Parks, who was a civil rights leader. He was from Fort Scott, Kansas. He was the director of Shaft, prominent for his photos of life for African
Gordon Parks.
Yep. He had his gravesite defaced in Fort Scott, Kansas, by people going and putting Trump Pence signs. And today we learned that during the Wichita Pride Parade, and this is something we've known for a little bit, but we couldn't talk while there was an investigation ongoing, that there was an attempt to car bomb one of the vehicles in the LGBT Pride Parade in Wichita. Well, these are the acts of the alt-right. This is what has happened, what Trump has stirred up, what his campaign foments in society. It's telling people it's okay to feel and act on these terrible, horrible things. And I don't know how many people listen to this, but I hope a lot of people do, and they think about what I'm about to say. And that is I hear a lot of people every day who talk about, I don't like Hillary, I don't like Trump, I'm going to vote for Jill Steiner, I'm going to vote for Gary Johnson. And I want to tell a lot of them, from being in a red state that's seeing these terrible things happen, the monster is at the door, people. This is where we're at. And I understand how they feel, but here's the reality. Hillary Clinton may be many things to many people, but no one at any point will say that she has been anything but supportive of the ideas of protecting civil liberties, civil rights, that she's with us on issues of standing up to racists and bigots. And she may be the first presidential candidate ever to get up on stage in a debate and tell the other side, this is racist dog whistles. And that's something pretty powerful. And right now, in the face of what Trump is doing, I'm okay with him losing. He needs to lose. But it's not just that Trump needs to lose. He needs to be demolished in November. If Trump is defeated and it is close, if it is at all close, we're sending the message that to this alt-right faction, whatever. In fact, Joe Scarborough brought this up yesterday, and he said, Trump's thinking he can be the shadow government, the Republican government in waiting, which has traditionally been a thing. But if Trump feels like, hey, I got within 3 points of Hillary, I got within 4 points of Hillary, I'm a legitimate option. You embolden these people. You tell these people, hey, there's a huge number of people in this country who believes this racist, horrible, monstrous stuff. We talk about, I'm going to make this analogy and people are going to say I'm going Godwin. But, Hitler didn't win his first races. It wasn't one where he walked right in and was suddenly there. But he came close enough that the next time around, it was one where this was the message that got people. And what Trump is building here, whether he knows it or not, and he would say, oh, that's not what I'm trying to do. But it doesn't matter. This is the kind of people that he's bringing out. He is bringing out the kind of people who are rallying to him in large part, this certain segment, because of hate, because of racism, because of intolerance, because of the way that they feel. And I would say this to all the people who are listening who are thinking, I'm going to vote Jill Stein, I'm going to vote Gary Johnson. I get how you feel, but I'm going to tell you, if Trump is not defeated soundly, then I don't care that your vote was for Jill Stein out of principle or Gary Johnson out of principle. All you did was get Trump close enough in percentages where that group of people can feel like, hey, we had a shot to win this, and our intolerant, hate-oriented, horrible ideas have a place in American society. And if that happens, no matter if Hillary wins, we'll spend 4 years dealing with people who feel embittered, buy into the conspiracies, and continue this hate stuff. So I'm at a point where I'm saying to people, it's fine. We want to win. Yes, I want to win, and I will take any win we get. But I don't just want to win in November. I want a crushing victory that just says this is something where we all got together and we realized this isn't tolerable. This isn't okay. And rather than splinter around because of whatever, we're going to say, look, we're going to swallow our pride to make sure that the distance between one candidate and Trump is so large that this is a clear message that we just won't tolerate this as an idea.
Well, if I might be ever so bold, when you have a compliant party apparatchik that's going to supplant Neville Chamberlain with Mitch McConnell, I don't know. I think those people need to be voted out of office too.
Oh, I
so
completely
it doesn't.
agree.
So it's not Trump. It doesn't matter if Trump is trounced in the most multitudinous way possible. He's still going to say he won. That's just the way his superior genes are made up. But you're
really
right.
Horrible,
we need to tell the alt-right. We all those people out there that think he might have a chance again. They're the ones that I'm sorry, they need to have their hopes crushed on that measure. But I'm sorry, you were going to say.
No. What I was going to say is one of the things that we forget is, and I'm reminded of a "They Might Be Giants" song where they said, "I can't stand you or your racist friend." I don't know for people who remember going back that far. But the problem is the more that the people on the right, conservative, go out of their way to excuse Trump for, whatever. And I say, no, you don't understand. That is not a whatever. He is talking about outright hatred, and you're going along. At a certain point, you have a responsibility to either stand up for it or admit openly that you're on the side of hatred and intolerance. And if that's where you're at, then that's a problem. That's a real problem. Because if you're willing to tolerate intolerance, people say, well, I don't stand with this and that. Think back if we went through the civil rights movement and we had people who said, yeah, I really don't like those bigots and racists in the South, but I'm not willing to do anything about it. Oh, those people in Massachusetts who are saying bad things to Bill Russell and the Celtics, I don't like them. But you know what? I'm still going to vote for them, or I'm still going to give them money. The two don't go together. You can't make that argument stick without it coming out where you're coming out on the side of intolerance and hatred, and that's just not acceptable.
Well, one little ray of hope that shines through these darkening clouds is that one thing I've noticed from since the debate, My brother-in-law had a party, and there's a divergent group of people there, and there were some adamant Trump supporters, and there were some people who sort of knew about Trump, but what was exposed during the debate was something that so offended their sensibilities. You know, they're not coming out saying they're going to vote for Hillary, but they're really questioning what's going on. But I also say it doesn't stop with Trump, because we have, you know, the sheriffs around here are oath keepers, which I also have to say people are offended with that now too. So there's a little bit of hope. I think there's some people who aren't the alt-right, and I have a problem with that term too, because aren't they neo-Nazis?
So, yeah, some of them are.
You know what? Just as we get out of here, I've gotten more anti-Semitic threats than I have to say. I've been around for a long time.
Yeah,
I've been around in regions where, you know, there's a neo-Nazi chapter right next to the John Birch Society office, and I haven't gotten this kind of anti-Semitic, violent kinds of threats really ever in my life, and I've been around.
Yeah, I've had. Well, I joked a year and a half ago when. And I will say this proudly, I was one of the first to write a piece on what I thought was the alt-right and the capture of the Trump campaign by Nazis. And I wrote it in 2015, September 2015, about conservatives. And I immediately had threats. I had someone threaten to out me. I had someone call somewhere that I had done work for. I had email threats. I mean, it was... For publicly, I joked about it, but I will tell you privately, it was pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
And to have someone call and message you up and just say, hey, say terrible things, or I'm going to call people that you've done work for, this and that. That's not fun. It is not a good experience. Would not recommend to anybody.
Well, so I don't know if we put the genie back in the bottle, but we got to start stuffing it in, and by sitting by the wayside hoping that maybe it'll shake out on its own never works. So
right, no.
All right, thank you.
Just one where you got to do it.
We got to. Thanks so much, Chris. We'll talk to you next week. All right. Okay, folks, better bug out of here. Only got a couple of minutes before Hartman comes up. Stay listening to Netroots Radio 24/7, 365. Why? Well, because who loves you, baby? Okay, Wink. See you on the other side.
All right. Row.